Alrighty, so the second part of week 3, the first part's going to look like the first part Monday, which was we're continuing the HTML crash course. This time you just watch from 33 minutes to the end of the video, continuing to code along in that same HTML index page, and then submit your URL. So that seems straightforward. Hopefully no issue there. Just a matter of getting introduced. So the one that's going to take a little time to cover will be this one. So I think I'll end with this one, and I'll just talk about the current topics this week. So for the current topics, I decided to stick with Microsoft purchases GitHub. This happened over the summer, and for many people, there was some woe is me, real big concerns. For some people, it was like, oh yeah, that's cool. I think that'll be a good thing. So I think it's helpful to at least start with what the current president of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, talks about why they purchased it and what they hope to get and what they hope to continue with. So, first hear from the guy who made the decision, and then go do some research on your own, right? Because there's a lot of talk around the web when this happened about the pluses and minuses of what this means or what the impacts are, and then in your discussion, right, provide us a link to the research and then share your thoughts about this if you'd never heard of it, and then what you found in doing the research, and then what links to videos or articles that you found about it. So that is your writing and then 2 replies. Okay. So again, I think it's just important to understand these big changes, these big shifts that happen in the landscape of what we work. Okay, so now the last part of this. So now we're actually going to use that command line that I asked you to determine on Thursday to actually clone. And clone basically means take the repo, because repos are different than folders, but they look similar because the folder in this case has this hidden directory called .git that actually contains all this versioning control that we're going to do locally that you've been doing out on the web. So the first step we have to do is actually clone that repo. Okay, so if you remember, at this point we have 3 repos we've set up. We've set up inside the CIT82 directory a private one, a public one inside this, and then we've set up a GitHub page, right? So you'll end up cloning 3 times, and that's good because it's experience in doing it. So I'm going to start with my private one. And there's the clone. But before I do that, I'm going to show you the way I recommend from a structure standpoint you set this up. And if you've taken any of my other classes, this will look familiar because I always recommend this kind of setup. So in order to do these commands, you need to be in a command line, and we talked about that this last time. So I'm going to just go ahead and open up my terminal inside of VS Code. I don't have a folder up yet. We'll do that in a second. And I'm on my desktop. You can be whatever starting directory you want. Documents might make sense. But for this case, I'm going to make a directory. Now, this is not cloning yet. This is making a base directory. And I can't, I can't force you to do this. I'm just going to recommend you do this. So there's 2 ways you make directories, and I suspect most people know the traditional way, and I'm just going to bring up Finder, right, is that you make a new directory, right? So new, and then wherever you're at over here, right, you could make a new folder, right? Where's it at? I say that, and then I have a hard time finding it. Oh, and there's a smart folder, but then there's a regular folder. So let me just navigate to my desktop right here so I can make a new folder. Now that's one way to do it, but I think using the command line is great. And learning more about how to use it is important. So I'm going to do pwd, and I can already see based on my my return for my command line what directory I'm in, but pwd just confirms where I'm at. So I'm going to do mkdir. This is true on Windows and on Mac. And I'm going to make a CIT82 FA18. Okay? So when I make that directory, now that directory exists. And so, by the way, if you looked at Finder or if you looked at Explorer, you would see that directory now show up. So it's just a command line equivalent of making that making that directory. So now I'm going to change, which by the way, if I did ls, then I actually would see that file in here in my list, and I could do cd and CIT. Now I have several CITs, so I had 82, hit tab, and then it would go to that, or I would type it all the way out. And then ls, there's nothing in here, so I'm going to clear that, right? So now we're actually ready. Now that we have Git installed, we have that base directory set up. Again, you can name this whatever you want. This is a naming convention I always use. The reason I like it, the class name, the year, the semester, and then the year you're taking it. So now we're going to do Git Clone. Okay, so Git space clone, and now we're going to grab that clone address. Now there's two major ways of doing cloning, or actually creating repos locally. SSH is another way you do it. I think, I'm not sure what way Todd shows it, but I know if you take my 94 for Node.js, I show how to do it the other way, the more advanced way. But in this case, GitHub generally recommends that you do it this way. Okay, so we're going to clone, or download, so we're going to clone, and then let's say, so where it says clone SSH. Now, we're not going to actually do the SSH, but that's if you were doing it, how you would do it. So we're going to actually clone in HTTP, so make sure you're in clone with HTTP, and what it does is it cycles through, it toggles through the different ways, so just make sure we're cloning with HTTPS, and then what I'm going to do is copy that, and it gives you a nice way of copying it right there. Okay, so or you could just drag that, and you can see what it's pointing to here, right? So, but either way, grab it, and it's grabbing it by grabbing it, I mean copying it, and then you're going to paste it. Okay, so what this is doing is from this base directory, it's going to create that first private repo. It's going to name it whatever the name I gave to my repo, and inside of that folder will be my files. So what it's doing here, boom, it cloned, it took pretty quick, that was cool, ls. Now I see, and let me just clear so you can see it, is that that private repo is there, right? I'm going to change directory, and in this case, because there was only one, cool. So I now see on my local system this these files that I've created out on the web, and in a future video, probably next week, we'll actually start working on the workflow so that you get used to changing files locally, adding them to the local repo, and then pushing them up to GitHub. So like I said before, we've just been doing it all up on GitHub, so now we're adding the component, which is having it stored locally, and then pushing the stuff up to GitHub. Okay, so let's actually do another one. So I'm going to cd period, which backs up one directory. I'm going to clear again. So now I'm actually going to do that command again, but now I'm going to do the other one, Git Clone. I'm going to go over here. Right, I'm going to go back to 82. I'm going to find my private one, which is here. I'm going to click here, clone with HTTP, copy that, and then this is cloning the private one. So, now see, I actually wanted to do the public one. So make sure, be very careful what you're doing. And there's now so many in here I actually have to find, which is cool. So many people in here, and there's other ways I actually could have done this, but here's the one I want. So now clone, copy. So what I could do here is just back up, and actually I could just replace the part that it did. Boom, cloning, cool. So if I did this right, I should now see two directories, right? So if I do clear, and then I do cd, or let's do ls again. So now I have the public and I have the private directories here, which is cool. So now the one I'm going to have you do on your own then will be the one that you created for your GitHub pages, right? But it's the same process, and I want you to put it under the same directory. So what you will do here is once you're done with this next command, you will end up having three directories here. Your name, last character of your first character of your last name, your private, your public, and then your GitHub IO one. Okay, so you will end up having three here, right? And I just want to show you, so now that when you do that, you just do, do an ls so we see all three, do a print screen, and then talk about, post up your print screen of that for there, and then we'll work with this later. But I just want to show you one other thing while we're here, right? So now that we're here and we have those directories, one thing that's kind of cool is what you're going to want to do is in whatever editor you're in, is I'm going to open a folder. And so what I would do, and I could navigate, because there's multiple ways to also get VS Code to open. You can actually do it from the command line, or you can do it from the interface, the web interface like I'm doing, or from the app interface like I'm doing here. So I could go to this directory, and then I could go private, open, and then what I've done here is I've opened up that directory into my editor, and then I can start looking at the files that I have created already. Okay, so I just want you to get used to this, but I will show you just because you're here and I think it's worth doing. I'm also going to open up terminal. I'm going to do a clear here. I'm going to do ls, I'm going to do desktop, ls, clear, and then I'm going to do CIT82 because I'm going to show you another way to do it. It's always good to know how to do this more than one way. I'm going to go into public this time. There we go. And now one thing you can do is do code. I think just star. Let's see if that works. Yeah. So that's the other way from the command line to start. In this case, VS Code. I think I'm sure there's probably something equivalent for other editors, but that's another way to do it. All right. So what we'll do next time, just as a preview. And by the way, just to complete that thought, I think I said it, but just to complete it, you'll take a print screen of your list, your ls, of those 3 repos that you have. I didn't walk you through the third one, but it's the same as the other 2, except you will go out. It won't be inside of our course organization. It'll be in your GitHub pages one. You'll take a print screen showing all 3 and then talk about your experience here. I'll do a little more writing about what I want, but basically, right, talk about your experience of doing this cloning or anything else you ran into about doing this. Okay, so as a preview, I've already started thinking about week 4. So week 4, I know these are going to change because these are from before, but I at least know we're going to do the CSS crash course part 1 and 2 again. So this time we'll end up using the editor to write that code, so it should be a little bit more enjoyable for those who have coded, and for those who haven't, you'll definitely see the benefits of having an editor to use in that case. And in there we will also talk about the process of flow, the workflow for modifying files locally, and then other things you're going to need. Modifying files, adding them to the repo, committing them into the repo, and then pushing those files up into GitHub. Okay, so this is your second item for week 3. Have a great one. Talk to you later.